I recently uploaded a video to the channel all about my first impression look of the Fujifilm GFX100RF. Now, one of the viewers left a really interesting comment, which was, I don't get the market for this camera other than maybe street photography. Why not buy the GFX100S2, which has IBIS and interchangeable lenses? Definitely not a great landscape camera. Which, to be honest, left me a little bit lost for words. So in this video, instead of replying to that comment, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to film a whole video where I'm going to try to explain why I do think that this could possibly be my favourite landscape photography camera. Hi guys, welcome to the video and welcome back to the channel. Now, in order for me to try to prove my point of why I think this could be my favourite landscape photography camera, what I'm actually going to do in this video is I'm going to take it out to a few different locations, a few different shots, try to do a few different scenarios, and let's see how it actually performs and what it is able to produce. Now, I'm starting off on my local patch. I'm about a mile away from home. It's St Mary's Lighthouse. I've actually already taken a blue hour shot. I did get a bit wet, that's the reason why I didn't film it. I was quite pleased with that one, but what I've done now, I've come up to the headland. There's the smallest gap ever on the horizon, and I'm hoping it's going to break through to this X-Plan crop that I've got going on here, because I think this is reason number one why this could be my favourite camera, and that is the aspect ratio modes you have in it. And if you look at it, they seem to replicate a lot of classic Fujifilm film cameras, and I think this is going to be a recurring theme through this video, to be honest, because I think we have to start approaching this camera from a point of view of if you've come from medium format film using an old medium format Fuji camera, and if you start looking at it like that, this camera starts to make perfect sense. So I'm in the X-Plan crop. There's a very, very small break about to happen. I'm going to hang around here and I'm hopefully going to get the shot. Well, from a nice simple composition at the coast, I'm having to work a lot harder on this shot because I'm now inland. I'm at Brinham Rocks, which is North Yorkshire, and it's an amazing place, loads of really unusual rock formations. But the problem is, it's because there's so many of them, they're quite spaced out, it's hard to find the best photographic subjects. So I've spent a good hour walking around, but I've settled upon this composition here. So the star of the show really is this main rock here, and I really like the tree to the right of it, which has been getting a little bit of light. This all around the side I think is a little bit busy, to be honest, so I need to simplify it. Now, the most easy way to simplify a composition really is to start zooming in a little bit. So if you're shooting very wide, you want to start trying to isolate features within the landscape, and of course this is the problem with this camera. So as the person left the comment on the video rightly said, why don't I buy a GFX100S Mark II and a selection of lenses? And the simple answer is weight and size, because you can't have too much stuff. If your bag's that heavy that you can't walk around with it, then really it makes it quite a bad choice for landscape photography. Now, the beauty of this camera is the fact that it's really small and it's really light. It's as light as my Micro Four Thirds cameras used to be, but it's a fixed lens. It's a fixed 28mm lens, which of course is absolutely no good for landscape photography. This camera is definitely no good for landscape photography. It does, however, have a trick up its sleeve. So that's the 28mm composition. As you can see, there's loads going on there. It's nothing like what I'm actually visualising. However, with a flick of a switch, it zooms in. Well, actually, it crops in. It crops into that glorious 100 megapixel sensor, and now gives you essentially a full frame size image with equivalent of a 35mm focal length. But what about that if that's not enough, which in this case for me it isn't? voila, we now have a 50mm equivalent lens, which obviously is just cropped into sensor, but it's cropped into sensor more, which is giving the equivalent of an APS-C size file of, I think, roughly about 38 megapixels, something like that. I'll put the exact figure on the screen now. And if I wanted to go even further, we could go into that, and we could go into what is equivalent of a 60mm lens in full frame terms. It's actually a micro four thirds crop, 20 megapixels, but you know what? In this instance, that's the shot I like. So that's what I'm going to work with. Now, I know there are people out there who think it's quite obscene that I'm cropping into an 100 megapixel sensor. You know, why don't I just carry a bigger camera and more lenses? But I think that's missing the point, because what I want is a smaller camera. And the fact that it's got a 100 megapixel sensor, I don't need a 100 megapixel sensor. This photo will be used for next year's Yorkshire calendar. So really, all I needed to do is print A4. And as long as it prints A4, it looks nice, that's fine. And even if I copy into micro four thirds size, I know it's still going to print really nice. And it's going to have the bonus of having those lovely Fuji colours, which I do find a real delight. Now, as you can see from the screen, the shot is actually quite dark, and that's because I'm trying to preserve all the highlights in the sky. So the shadow details are quite dark, but the good news is this sensor has absolutely insane dynamic range. So that means I can quite easily pull back the shadow details and also darken down the bright patches if I need to in the sky. Ultimately, just leaving me more time to enjoy my photography than worry about the technical side. As long as I don't clip the highlights, I know that I'm pretty safe and I can get the shot I want. So a few technical points about this shot, and there aren't many, to be honest. The hardest thing really was finding the composition. So that's one thing I would say, if you want to practice landscape photography, if you want to become a better photographer, spend the time exploring to find the composition. Don't go for the first one you find. And this is where having such a small camera really helps, because my bag's not heavy, so I find it easier to explore and actually just enjoy the process of photography. So technical points, I've cropped into a 50mm equivalent lens. Obviously it's not, it's just to crop the full frame sensor. I'm shooting the base ISO of 80, I want it f8, and I'm just going to carry on taking the shot until that optimum point of the light happens, which I think I may have passed it now because the light's slightly coming off the tree, but I'm just going to carry on, take a few more. And the shot that I think is the best out of this sequence, I'm going to put on the screen for you now. Time for another shoot. I'm going to work quite quickly in here because the fog is quickly lifting. This is it's a folly stone circle, so it's built quite recently, but it's in a great spot, especially with fog. But I'm going to have to work really quickly, so I suppose it's a good point to address the lack of IBIS on this camera, because it doesn't have IBIS, but what it does have is a leaf shutter, so it means I can hold it at slow shutter. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here because this section was filmed before I had a coffee and I'd been awake for about 5 minutes. So really it wasn't the best time for me to try and explain why a leaf shutter is better than a focal plane shutter. So I thought what I would do is ask ChatGPT to explain it a little bit better than I tried to in this video. So essentially the benefits of a leaf shutter for handheld photography is the low vibration and the smoother operation. And that is because the leaf shutter is built into the lens and it opens and closes with a circular iris-like motion, which produces less mechanical shot than a focal plane shutter. And what this means is you can achieve slightly slower shutter speeds without any kind of sort of camera shake. What I would say though, it is not as effective as IBIS, but it is better than having a normal camera with a normal focal plane shutter without any kind of IBIS system. So it's almost like a midway ground. So because I'm now handheld, I can move around a lot easier, be a lot more responsive. I suppose it's a good opportunity to discuss whether cameras actually need IBIS for landscape photography. Personally, I always use my cameras on a tripod. I prefer working that way, but of course IBIS is useful. It means you can dish your tripod at home. And of course, if you've got IBIS, it means you can move around a lot more like I'm doing with this location now, trying to get a shot before all this magic disappears. So for the final location of this video, we're back on the northeast coast, back in South Northumberland, and we're going to do a minimal black and white long exposure shot. Now this camera has a hidden trick for doing long exposures, and that is that it has a built-in optical ND filter. So literally with a flick of a switch, I can engage a 4x neutral density filter, which is going to block out 4 times the amount of light, obviously, by the very nature of what a neutral density filter does, which really helps start to get long exposures. Now it has a base ISO of 80, which means you can keep the sensitivity down. You can turn on the 4x filter, and then if I put a normal 10x filter on, which I'm using a magnetic system, then you have ultimately 14 stops of ND power, which makes this something of a long exposure workhorse. Now I did actually do a video in the city quite recently where I did some really long exposures using this combination. I'll do a link in the corner to that video now, because it's quite interesting if you like this sort of thing. But yeah, for this shot we're keeping it really dead simple. Single post in the North Sea. We've got the tides coming at the moment, so we've got the waves lapping around, but what I don't want to see the waves as such. I just want to get a sort of misty, ethereal look throughout the frame. And honestly, this has to be one of the most simplest cameras I've ever used for long exposures. Now it will still focus even with 14 stops of ND power in front of it, which makes it a really powerful little tool for such a thing. At the moment I'm actually at the maximum zoom mode, so cropping in quite a lot. And it may be that I take it a bit wider, I'm not sure, and that's the beauty, I think, of having a zoom like this, the fact that you still have this whole 100 megapixel image sitting behind your crop. So if you feel later that maybe you cropped in too much, you can take it nice and wide. So yeah, another thing I think for me makes this a really powerful little camera for landscape photography. Now before I put the shot up, I've got one last thing I really want to say, and that is just because I find this camera perfect for my landscape photography, and I do think it's a really powerful little thing. That doesn't mean it's the camera for you. Just because it's the camera for me doesn't mean it's the camera for you. All I can say is try different cameras and find the camera that fits perfectly for what you want to do. But don't be so quick to say that that camera is no good for a certain job just because you don't work that way. And I think all of us could learn something from that, really. Your perfect camera is not somebody else's perfect camera, and vice versa. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and here's the final minimal black and white long exposure shot.